Hello? Hello?
What's up?
What's going on? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right.
You sound
I
sleepy.
saw you were asking about my name change.
Yeah, what happened? It's Ryan Beard. What's going on with that?
Yeah, yeah. I just decided to go by my actual name again, back like I did on TikTok a few years
Okay.
ago.
All right. Yeah, that
Where he?
I didn't think it was you when you first popped in the chat because it says because you lose your verification when you do that. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, do I really? That's really annoying. Do I
Yeah,
have
you
to like
have to
maybe I
reapply,
have
I
to
think.
apply for it again? Yeah.
Yeah, if you go back to the old name, because I did that on my old main channel, I changed it from Papa Gut to Papa Gut Archives to build this new channel because I didn't want people if I was gonna leave that channel for dead anyway, so I didn't want people to like if they ever saw a conversation with me or something, to go look at Papa Gut, see a dead empty channel, and go like, oh, that's verified, and go like, oh, this must be the channel, and then see nothing on there, and then just lose interest. So you know,
What are you doing now with your channels? You like why did you kind of turn away from the one that had the more subscribers? You just felt like cuz it was a lot of dead subscribers?
yeah, that was part of it. So like, I've been wanting to get away from the two channel meta for a while. You know, I was doing like the really important stuff on the main channel and then like some of the fun stuff on the secondary channel. And it made me hate doing my content because like even though I would do more than just the really serious stuff, it felt like that was who I was becoming known as. So it was like really frustrating me. So I actually
Hmm.
the original plan was I'm going to use the main channel as my streaming channel, but do like a show. So I was going to do like a whole lot of things. I was going to cite all my sources. I put chapters on everything, and then I was going to put the segments on the secondary channel, which is now the new main channel. I did that for a while, and
Hmm.
I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I want everything on one channel. So I was actually originally planning to do it on the Papa Gut channel, and then my traction was so shot on videos because of the way that I orchestrated it that the videos were doing worse on the old on like the old main the Papa Gut channel than they were doing on the former Papa Gut leftovers channel. So I'm like, fuck it, let me just build a new audience. I get more traction on the other one anyway, but it's like I have so many empty followers. I might as well just try to build from the ground up. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll just go get a real job. It is what it is at this point.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it is very frustrating when you have an account that has like a lot of followers and then it's not super active because, if all the followers came over from TikTok, then like it's so annoying trying to get YouTube followers from TikTok because they'll go and subscribe to you but
Yep.
then never actually watch your videos. They're just like kind of subscribing to be nice, you know?
Yeah, and then they like, and which I rather people just not subscribe if you're not gonna look at the content, because then they'll get in their feed and they won't watch it, and that's like, okay, is this helping me? I don't you don't have to watch
Yeah,
every video
and
I make, but like watch once a month. Yeah, it's not bad.
yeah, and then it kind of like inflates your numbers, and then people are like, "Why do you have so many subscribers but so little?" I was dealing with that for a while.
Yeah, it
Um,
was just like annoying. I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm chilling doing like the more fun content. We do serious stuff too, obviously. Just so people wanted me to talk about that the Andrew Callaghan accusation stuff, but keep it lighthearted too. I hate it when like sexual assault becomes like fucking content. It's just like a frustrating thing, but it's a
yeah, it can be very mentally taxing, and then it's like you're weighing up. You're like, this is uh it's kind of like we're turning sexual assault into a spectacle in a way,
yep.
which is not good. But then on the other hand, it's like, well, if we don't cover these topics, then they can go like, without getting the audience that they maybe deserve to get. So then it's like, okay, well, what is the correct answer here, you know?
Yeah, it's like a double edged sword, especially when other people weigh in on it, like with the Kai Cenat stuff. Like I felt like a lot of people were kind of downplaying the issue there too. So I'm like, fuck, I want to talk about this because I feel like people aren't talking about it the right way, and then you kind of start talking about it. And
What was your
it is.
take on that situation? All I really saw was Ethan's video talking about it.
Yeah, so based on the first of all, the timeline is all over the place. Kai did not give anybody a reasonable timeline. He made it seem like the second he heard about everything, he went to the police and his lawyers and this and that. That's not what happened. Like she called him, was crying, told him this whole stuff. He was going back and forth with her. She's like, "This is the description." He even says in his video at one point that he knew. He makes it seem like he knew exactly who she was talking about, like when she was on the phone with him crying and describing him. And then he kind of played stupid. Then in their text messages with each other after the fact, she's like, "This is him," and he's like, "Oh, I don't know everybody at the party, so like you bear with me." And then she's like, "I then when she found pictures with them together, she's like, what the fuck?" And that's kind of where everything spiraled. For me, all he really should have done is give the name and then left it at that. That's it. That's all he should have done is give her the name so she can go to the police. She did everything the right way. But everybody's running defense for him. But the reality is that there wouldn't be any legal issue if he gave the name at all, especially after she like showed like 5 pictures of him. So that's what he should have done. Let the authorities deal with the rest because that's all you really can do.
Yeah, I think it makes sense if you're one of your friends is being accused that might put you in a, a state where you'd be kind of freaking out a bit. Like that makes sense, but I think what isn't okay is playing dumb. You need to be very forthright with everything that you know. And if your answer is here's his name, but I can't say anything more because of legal reasons, then I feel like that would be
Yeah.
valid. But what isn't valid is like not giving clear answers.
Oh yeah, for sure. And my thing is a lot of people say like, well, they're friends. He's going to be biased towards them. But the problem is that is literally part of like rape culture, right? I mean, it's being biased towards your
Well,
friends
yeah.
who may have sexually assaulted somebody. So just the name and then move on. You don't have to think he did it. Let the authorities deal with it. But all the inconsistencies and shit in his story were shitty to me. That's my biggest issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to weigh in on it too much if I haven't really researched it, but yeah, I've been trying to figure out what is the correct way to go about handling these types of situations like the Andrew Callahan situation because on the one hand, I think it's the statistic is like 90% of accusations are true and 10% of accusations are false. But I don't agree with like the leftist talking point of like believe all victims because obviously there are instances where people lie, but I think I my perspective is like lean towards believing victims but don't believe all victims because there's like a 90% chance that they're probably telling the truth. I think that's kind of where I'm at
I get
with
that.
like my how I handle it.
I think that and I could be wrong about this. I think the 90% thing is probably 90% of people who like actually accuse people like when they go to the authorities, or I don't know. I don't know if that's like every person. I wonder that.
Yeah, I
If
think
I could find like the statistic
I
on
think
that,
that's
it's
in
interesting.
I think that statistic is based on actual like in court
Yeah, there's
instances.
some people. I'm not saying that any of those girls are, but some people will just kind of go out and just start fucking going crazy and just shoot false accusations. And even if even if only 10% of them are false, especially when you're like a guy, it takes one false accusation like against you or somebody that's like proven false for you to like develop this bias against women, which is unfortunate, the unfortunate reality too. So there's a lot of moving parts in this.
And there is the reality that when someone has like 5 million followers or something, there's a pretty statistical likelihood that there's someone in that audience of 5 million followers that would be willing to make some crazy false accusation. Just like, in an audience of 5 million followers, there's probably someone who's willing to do a fucking swatting or, there's insane people on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
internet.
like
So,
these like the outliers, like bad people. Yeah,
yeah, like I do you know the musician Joshua Bassett? He's like he like dated Olivia Rodrigo or whatever.
see what he looks like.
Um
Oh, I have no idea. This guy,
he's like a
Joshua.
Disney Channel dude.
Oh, okay, that already works against him there. Okay, Joshua
Well,
Bassett.
anyway, I was friends with him in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we did like theater together. But anyway, there was one point where some random account that like had no followers on Twitter, no profile picture, no anything, just randomly just like tweeted Joshua Bassett assaulted me. And it was like pretty fucking clear. Like they gave no evidence, they didn't tell their story, they had no profile picture. It was like pretty clear. Like in that instance, I definitely took Joshua's side that like this seems like just some crazy out of nowhere allegation. So I definitely don't have the perspective of like believe anyone who comes forward, but I think I do have the perspective of like my first instinct is to lean towards believing, I
I get
guess.
that. My thing is, I think it's good to listen to what people have to say and then just kind of, for me, I think evidence is obviously like, I understand where you're coming from. For me, like, unless I see something very tangible, it's hard for me to be like, okay, I think that this person did this thing. It certainly becomes like a bit of a red flag when I see an accusation, but I don't want to jump the gun. Never know. Some people are really scummy. So,
Yeah. Do you think there should be a difference between how like the court of public opinion handles something versus like a court of law, or do you think it should be like pretty much the same?
I mean, I guess it depends on the situation. I feel like there's probably a lot of scenarios. I guess similarly, my thing is one of the problems with the court of public opinion is that, despite the fact that there are certainly are issues in everybody's legal system, they still have standards that they try to abide by, and people online don't. I think that online can be like this really crazy, intense situation where people can almost be gaslit into thinking that they were sexually assaulted. I know that sounds really bizarre, but like it's so hard to communicate. But some people will feel like they're put in an uncomfortable situation, and then nowadays that's called like rape or grooming, like you saw with Call Me Carson, like, you know what I mean? And people, I think, truly believe, looking back, that they actually were assaulted in some capacity, and now, even if they weren't by any definitionally, because we have like an over affirming online like presence in some ways. So I just think I like to be very careful when talking about stuff like this because it can go out of control.
Yeah, I think that can happen definitely, especially with I think putting grooming accusations just if like there's a 2 year age gap, I think is definitely ridiculous. But as far as like misremembering whether you were coerced or not, I don't know if I necessarily feel like someone would. I know that people can misremember things if they're heavily under the influence sometimes, but I do
That's
feel
another
like
factor too,
someone.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I do feel like usually someone would know whether or not they were coerced or not, but that is the thing with consent and with coercion is a lot of it is kind of happening within someone's head, and it can be difficult to know that, like, it is just very hard to nail down some of this stuff, or like nail down like the whole idea of someone under the influence can't consent. It's like, well, then
What
if
happens
two
if
people
both
are
of them?
both under
Yeah,
the
they're
influence,
right.
yeah, does that mean that they're both? Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, another problem too is that we're evolving very quickly as a society, which I think is a good thing. But I think at least the two of us, we know that unfortunately, a lot of places where people are getting their sexual experiences from pornography, there's a lot of, historical teachings on, to men to be incredibly persistent, and then you have I think that there's probably a good amount of like young men that are unintentionally sexually assaulting girls, thinking that that's the way that they're supposed to interact, and then some girls just taking it because they think that that's how they're supposed to interact, and then maybe, years later they're like, wait, this was wrong, I was sexually assaulted. Um and they probably were, but, and this is like a hard truth, so I don't think that everybody who sexually assaults probably even realizes what they're doing is wrong, which is that is the rape
Hmm.
culture, and it's a hard thing to talk about because people will instantly say like, oh, you're a rape apologist, but it's like that is what sexual assault culture is, like people just a lot of people not understanding what they're doing is wrong.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not understanding that what you're doing is wrong doesn't absolve you from guilt in those instances.
Oh, for
I
sure.
think we can I think there you can make an argument that you can be more forgiving towards someone if they didn't understand that what they were doing is wrong, but I definitely don't think you should absolve them of any of the guilt because it doesn't change the experience that the victim has in that instance.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. That's why it's a very delicate dance, right? It's a hard topic.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been kind of thinking about the topic of porn is a very interesting conversation because if you go online, it's like the people who are super anti-porn are like the hardcore conservatives,
Yeah.
and then the hardcore radical feminists are like both very anti-porn for like completely different reasons. And then
Yeah.
it feels like kind of the people in the middle are the ones that are more like pro porn. But then I feel like we can't ignore that there are like a lot of really shitty messages being taught in porn, and there are a lot of times that these women are being very like pressured into the industry, and like that's something that's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, no, the craziest people are the ones that are talking about pornography in like the worst way. But, for me personally, I've been trying to disengage with pornography, and I felt like it's had a positive impact on my relationship. It's a weird relationship to have with it. It almost like, I think in a lot of instances, it desensitizes people. It teaches people the less than stellar way to interact with sex. It's not good for building relationships. it's I don't think we should make it illegal, but I think, and then there's some people who will like a lot of some young men who will like literally just jerk off so much that they're not going outside. Like they'll make it like a weird hobby or a habit. Um, I think that people
Yeah,
should generally lean away from it, but or try to.
I view I view porn addiction kind of like I view food addiction. Like it's like porn isn't inherently addictive in the same way like heroin would be, but if you establish a habit where you're becoming super dependent on it, then it definitely can become addictive in that circumstance. I feel like you have to have a healthy relationship with it, but it's difficult to have a healthy relationship with it when a lot of the content is not healthy. So,
Yeah, that's definitely true. A lot of it's unhealthy, and people are engaging with it too young. Like people are starting at like 12, 13, and it's not like it used to be where you see your dad's nudie mag and you see some boobies. Now, you see some boobs on the internet, and all of a sudden you get to like hardcore, consensual non-consent, and you don't understand what that even means, and now you think that this is like real. And then you see her
mhm.
acting as if she really likes it, even though she's not supposed to. And then I think it can really fuck people up by the time you get to the developed age. All of a sudden, you're like, yeah, she wants it. She's saying no, but she wants that. That's kind of the interaction I think a lot of people are getting from that. But young people, so it's fucking people up.
Yeah, I mean, they have like when you go to a website, you have to click, yes, I'm over 18. But
Yeah,
obviously, when I was a kid, I was like lying.
yeah.
I would
I've
just
been
click the yes, I'm over 18.
I've been 18 since I've been 12. You know what I mean? So that's what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is.
exactly. Yeah, so I wonder, like, I definitely agree with that. I just wonder, like, what sort of like if there's any like policies that could be put in place to kind of more safeguard, like, maybe creating like a government mandated version of the internet that's like more safe for children and like you I feel like that feels a bit like authoritarian, but maybe that could be a good thing if like parents are like required to, if you're going to have your children on the internet, then they have to use this version of the internet that is much more safeguarded against like pornography.
I mean, I definitely think that something like that would be phenomenal for parents to at the very least choose to do. I think part of the problem is that parents don't understand. Like when I was younger, I used to look at like, okay, there's like a little bit of an embarrassing story. When I was like really young, I'd go to work with my mom and I'd use their, like I think 10 or 12, and I would use the work computers and look at porn, right? And so eventually they monitored it and they found out, and my mom's boss was like, hey, what's going on here? And I used her login and stuff. So she got in a little bit of trouble, but he was like laughing. He's like, kind of boys will be boys. But the thing is like I said, when he was growing up, when her boss was growing up, he was just looking at a nudie mag, and you can't go down this like non-consensual path into like fucking insanity.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it's older people just not understanding the particular struggle and being like, yeah, my kid's 14, like I don't care if they're looking at porn, who gives a shit.
Hmm.
And that's part of the
Like what?
problem.
Yeah, for example, like watching TV back in the day, like when we were kids, that's very different than like going on TikTok or like looking
Yeah.
at a magazine. It's very different than going on a porn site. And yeah, I think a lot of the older people who are making legislation don't understand how radically different the internet is and how insane a lot of the shit you can find on there is.
Oh, for sure. They don't understand at all. They're taking a long time to catch up. In general, the government moves very slowly. It's a shit
Yeah,
show.
we need people in the government who understand the internet because that's the age that we're heading into. Like if you don't understand the internet, then
And you're
like
kind of fucked.
what the fuck are you
Well,
doing?
that's a problem
Yeah.
too, because it leads to new issues. Because like I want to have kids soon, but then I'm like, how much of the internet do I expose my kid to? Because if I don't give my kid technology, if I don't give my kid an iPad, is that going to hurt them? Because I know it sounds so silly, but like that's going to be the job that people are going to be doing is all technological jobs on, whatever technology. And so if I don't give them something like that to stimulate them when they're younger, they're fucked. But then at the same time, the internet's horrible, and I don't want my kids to have social media because it's super. I feel like it's a net loss for a kid that doesn't know how to navigate it.
And then there's a ton of social pressure as well. Like if your kid goes to school and all their friends have cell phones and all their friends have social media and they're the one that has the parents who don't let them do that stuff, then your kid is probably going to resent you for it.
Yeah,
So it's really hard to figure out how to walk that line.
absolutely. And sometimes you do have to let your kid resent you, and they'll know when they get older. But that is part of like the social pressure. And I'm older, so like I'm 32. When I was in school, people just started to kind of have iPhones. So when I was 16, I got a flip phone, and that wasn't super. That wasn't it wasn't too bad because nobody really had that stuff on them. But nowadays, I can imagine like even if you have like what are we up to, like 13 or 14? If you don't have the most recent iPhone, kids are probably getting bullied. Um, so that's a problem
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, it's a whole mess. I've talked to Chloe about that. I think I definitely don't want my like 2, 3-year-old to have an iPad. I think once they get to the point where they're interacting with other people, then probably in this era they would have to have a cell phone. But I definitely would not want them on something like TikTok until they're at least like
Oh yeah.
whatever the age that you're supposed to, 13 or older or something.
Absolutely. The worst is like when I see people like their parents go into restaurants with their kids and they plop an iPad down in front of them, they turn like Coco Melon on or some bullshit, and their kids just that's the only thing that stops them from screaming. And it's like, damn, what happens when that's an unrealistic environment? Because what happens when your kid gets older and they just aren't going to have something you can simulate them with? And like now they're in a situation they're not learning how to engage with it. I just feel like that's so bad.
Yeah, well, I guess you could make the argument that these days everyone is constantly on their phones, but yeah, I just feel like I mean, obviously I'm not a child psychologist, so I haven't like looked into the research on this, but it definitely feels detrimental to a child's development to just be like plop an iPad in front of
Yeah.
them and just it definitely feels like
It feels wrong.
some parents are taking the easy way out rather than putting in the hard work of raising your kid. You just give them the iPad.
Yeah, and it raises the kid for them. Just like in the past, people would have TVs raise their kids, and then we don't know the negative impacts until those kids grow up, and we go, "Oops!" That's you only really learn that through seeing the negatives of it.
Yeah, now all my dreams are SpongeBob and I can't escape it,
Yeah,
because you let me
yeah,
watch that as a kid. So
yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's gonna be something else. Having the good thing is that if you, I'm gonna try to have my kid watch like educational television and like engage with like educational, toys and whatnot, even for like iPhones type stuff or whatever I can do. But it sets the bar pretty
Mhm.
low for every other kid. So at least your kid's gonna come out on top if you do the bare minimum at this point. You feed them decent food so that they grow up healthy, like with the right development. Get all those nutrients in there, and you have them use educational tools, and you should be okay. And then all the other kids will fail, and your kids will rise to the top. And you could, once you're up there, you can look down on the peasants and go, "Fuck, oh, fuck you," you know.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the goal.
There's a goal, man. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I had an interesting childhood. I didn't know if did you know that I was homeschooled?
Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, for like
Yeah, I
a
think I
while, right?
talked about that on America's Got Talent
Yeah, that was
a
fun. I
while
liked
ago.
watching that. That was a fun one.
But yeah, it's pretty interesting that my parents they did a lot of they kind of fell into some of the conservative rabbit holes of like don't let your kids watch Harry Potter because Harry Potter is gonna if they start watching that then they're gonna start enjoying witchcraft. And
Yeah.
then
Well,
now it's the liberal parents that won't let their children watch Harry Potter because JK's
right, yeah,
transphobic.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's
that by the way, that's my theory right now is that we have so many non-binary people identifying as like deerkin because they can't identify with their Patronus anymore because J.K. Rowling is so transphobic.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, I get that. Although Harry Potter's pretty good. I've been rewatching it with my wife. We went on like a Harry Potter walk upstate, and now we've been watching them all. And it's interesting because I know J.K. Rowling, she doesn't like trans people, but the stories age well. They age with the audience. Like when you're 13, the first movie, it's geared towards 13-year-olds, and as it goes on, it gets more mature. It's very interesting. So, not to promote transphobia on my platform here, but
Yeah, I think it's a bit silly to act like that the stories had no merit once you find out that the creator of them is a bad person. Like, clearly, tons of people resonated with Harry Potter. There's a reason why it's made like billions of dollars or whatnot. But what is your perspective on the idea of like not supporting, for example, the new Harry Potter game that's coming out, the whole idea of like kind of voting with your dollars? Because I feel like that is sort of a
yeah,
free
it's your
market idea
yeah,
of
do your
like,
thing. Absolutely. I mean, my thing is like I haven't gone super in depth with the transphobic stuff. It seems like she refers to like people with periods as women, and she's very adamant about defending that point. She seems like a little bit of like a traditional feminist. What do they call those turfs? Is that what people usually call them? Um,
yeah,
10, 15, 20 years from now, she's probably going to be seen the same way that we look at somebody from 50 years from today as like, oh, that person was pretty racist. But from a historical context, you know, it's right now. Well, I don't really. I mean, that's normal for someone her age. Like, I'm not, I'm not saying it's okay, but it's like normal for somebody her age. So I don't take it personally because she grew up in that. Well, I'm also not trans, so, but she grew up in that environment where that was the general teachings, and so I think it's different than somebody who maybe is more like a little younger who should know a bit better because they didn't grow up in the same toxic environment. But yeah, don't buy anything. Don't support anybody that you don't want to support. Like, yeah, don't, if you don't want to play the game, don't play the game. If you don't want to watch the movies anymore, you know, fuck her. That's her fault. I mean, she made her perspective. People disagree. They don't want to spend their money on that. That's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, I think you can separate the art from the artist, but I think if you don't want to separate the art from the artist, then that's a. I
Yeah.
think people being like, oh, it's totally cringe if you're not going to buy a video game because of the creator. It's like, no, if enough people don't buy it, then it can have a a negative impact on the market and show the market that like, hey, if we put millions of dollars behind people who have these beliefs, then it might not be successful. And then, you know, hopefully moving forward, you know, then, you know, people like her won't get their things produced. I mean, that's the hope, I guess.
Are you gonna buy the Harry Potter game? Is that what you're telling me? Or are you not gonna buy it?
I don't think I am.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's enough good games I'm excited about this year coming out. I'm
Okay.
excited about like Spider-Man, the new Zelda, new Star Wars game. No, I don't think I'm gonna get it. But I don't know. I don't know if I guess I should be someone who's like, do not buy this game, but I don't know. I don't feel like super strongly about it one way or the other.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know if I'm gonna buy it only because it's not really my kind of game. That's pretty much it. I'm like an old boomer, so I play like World of Warcraft and like balloons. So, you know, I'm not super excited about any new up and coming games. But when are we going to see the Ryan Beard, you know, gaming channel, the playthroughs?
Oh, it's so true. No, I don't think I'm gonna do. I mean, I might do like Twitch streams and play games at some point. I've always considered doing that. But it's one of those things where once you build up a commentary audience, I feel like they're there for commentary.
Oh
And if
yeah,
you
for
build up
sure.
like a yeah,
We got to make a new.
I
You make
thought
a new
about like
channel. That's the Ryan Beard, commentary channel. I mean, game channel.
so Sneeko has talked. Yeah, but it would get way less views, and I don't know. I think when I'm gaming,
I
I
don't feel like
like
it'd be worth it,
to.
huh?
I think when I'm gaming,
By
it's
the way, that
kind of my
Sneeko thing, guys,
escape.
was a
So I
video on
think
the side. I was looking at
bringing
a Ryan's
work
channel.
into gaming makes me
It
kind
was
of
like a
feel like
basic
the
one
thing that
from
I'm
this
doing
channel.
to unwind has now become work, you know?
So
I know that's such a privileged take, but
no, I mean that's my thing. That's why I don't play a lot of games on stream. Is because I feel like when I'm off stream, I'm off stream. You know, it's not the you know it's weird. It's like every part of your life becomes content, and it starts getting frustrating. You know,
where he interviews.
that's
Yeah,
my
I've never been the type of like quote unquote influencer who wants to be like, "Hey Instagram, look at what I'm eating for breakfast." It's like,
yeah.
why would anyone give a fuck about that?
It's
Like,
also, even if people did care, to me, it's just like give yourself some time to be a person and not have to perform for a fucking audience. You know, that always burns me out. Giving too much to people, it makes me feel like I don't have anything for myself. It's too much from like a mental perspective for me.
yeah, for sure. But I do want to get more into the routine of like posting more often. I definitely feel like I'm not happy with my current output that I'm like I definitely put a ton of work into my videos, so I hopefully people understand that I can't come out with one every week or something, but when I've gone like multiple months without posting, I start feeling like what, you know, I should be getting out more content.
What are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working on a big project. I'm not like telling anyone exactly
Okay.
what it is, but
All right.
it's a project that I've been working on for about 6 months, and I'm probably going to be working on it for about another year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a pro. Is that a
So,
video that you're working on for that?
I don't really want to say any more
Okay.
about it,
Fair
but
enough.
yeah,
Fair
I'm
enough.
just a big project that's going to take like maybe 2 years to finish. But yeah, and then other than that, just trying to figure out which people to cover. I think the next thing I'm going to make a video on is this this girl who says that she doesn't think non-binary people exist. So I'm gonna
Uh,
kind of try and make some arguments in favor of why I think they do exist.
you better
So I
you
think
better
that's my
convince
next
that
one.
person, or else some of you guys are gonna start disappearing. All right, if she convinces
Yeah,
if she convinces the world they don't exist, they're gonna disappear. All right.
it's like Thanos. She has the power to
Yeah.
make them just disappear out of existence. Pretty scary.
Yeah, it's very scary. Are you throwing your hat into the ring with Andrew Tate at all? Because I don't think you've talked about him, have you?
I kind of purposefully avoided Andrew Tate. I have a tendency to not really love covering the people that like everyone is talking about, because I feel like that it's kind of like, what else is there to say other than what everyone has already been saying? So
That's
and
fair.
of course, nothing against people who cover the topics everyone else is covering. I just kind of like to
That's all I do, Ryan.
yeah, I'm directly
All I
shitting on
do.
you
What
right
the
now.
fuck? No, I get
What
what you're
the
saying.
fuck is wrong with you?
It's a burnout too. Fucking Manosphere shit's crazy. It's almost like I feel like I'm getting gaslit every day when all these little boys are following fucking Andrew Tate, who she's just getting worse and worse. I mean, what a
Well, and
bad example
the
of a
like
man.
the apologia they're having to do for him, like once you buy into like Andrew Tate is right and everything against him is the Matrix, then you have to keep going down that rabbit hole of like, well, I guess the police are now lying when they
Yeah.
say that he like was coercing these women.
Well, that's the whole
Yeah, it's
thing.
sad.
Well, people are like, well, there must be pressure from an outside entity. It's like, I think the Romanian, like they said something that they've been investigating this for like a while now, and they finally pulled the trigger on it. I mean, here's my thing. Innocent until proven guilty, yada 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 yada. But this is different. This isn't a Twitter accusation. This is a police force, and it's in a country that Andrew Tate has moved to for two reasons, according to him. One is because you could buy your way out of with government corruption with money, and number two is because the Me Too movement isn't as prevalent. And now he's getting arrested for something in the Me Too movement. And it's like, if it walks like a duck, it
Yeah.
talks like a duck. I feel like this motherfucker, if that country that you think doesn't give a fuck about sexual assault is getting you for some kind of like sexual thing, yeah, maybe you did it.
Well, Andy straight up admitted that he was doing the lover boy method, right? Isn't that a
Yeah,
thing that-
yeah. There was like this whole. I always reference this like the Mimi did a video on it. I don't know if you know who she is, but she mentions that in her video. I always show it to like reference it. He's on record talking about how he would get women to fall in love with him, and to do sex work stuff, and then wouldn't even like they weren't even into they weren't even in the industry before they started talking to him, which is fucking crazy to me. That's his words. And
well, yeah, he would brag about that, like he'd get women who hadn't done sex industry before because they're more like, I don't know, like pure or whatever. It's
Yeah.
so fucking creepy.
And then he's even on record saying that he treats the women in his webcamming business similar to the way that people like pimp street prostitutes on the street, which we know is the perfect example of how to treat a woman, right? So, I mean, there's so many fucking red flags with this guy. It's insane.
Yeah, and I thought it was so funny that Sneeko was like flip flopping back and forth between acting morally outraged about OnlyFans and then like being like, maybe I should start an OnlyFans business where I get a bunch of women to work for me.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, that's completely logically in line with like dumb, fucking unintelligent, like waste of space that aren't real men. It's that porn or OnlyFans is bad. Being a prostitute's bad, but controlling the prostitutes is good. Like, because you're treating them like objects that are for your financial gain. If you really think that these things are truly bad, you wouldn't have a webcam business that effectively exploits women.
It's like they'll walk you through every single point. They'll say like, we think OnlyFans is bad because it's like manipulating vulnerable men. And then like, oh, we can make a lot of money off of OnlyFans, so we should get these women to work for us. And then it's like, we really care about men. Our whole thing is that we care about the men in our audience. It's like, no, you fucking don't.
No,
You just
they
said
don't.
that OnlyFans manipulates vulnerable men. So you are admitting that you are funding a business which is directly manipulating the people in your audience.
Yeah, but then if you press them on that, their response is, yeah, but those men are losers. And it's like, okay, so like those men that you're calling losers are the men that need like the most help. Right. And so
yeah, exactly.
It's frustrating, especially when people will always, I hate this argument that Andrew Tate does good and he does bad, because like, sure, he does some good things when he talks about how to be a better person, not particularly in depth. but it's not worth it at the expense of all the bigoted shit against women. Because the reality is like you probably don't follow him for the self help. That's probably something that sounds nice. You follow him because he's based and hates women. But if I came along and I said the same things and I was like, we should really support women, or excuse me, and I was like, here's some self help stuff, take a shower, stuff like that, and did all that, and I was super fit and had a lot of money. But then I also said, but black people are less than people. You'd probably call me racist. So why do we? Why? But Andrew Tate could say it about women, and all of a sudden, but he's not sexist. He loves women. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a cop out of like, I love black people. I just don't like the ones that are all committing crimes or whatever. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
people will
yeah.
always find ways to kind of work around it.
It's just
Their
unfortunate.
mental gymnastics that they do. But yeah, I just think the whole worldview that he's promoting. I mean, he said like society is better in Saudi Arabia because the women can't like talk back against what their husbands tell them to do.
Oh yeah,
It's
and then
like,
he's there's so many things. I started to like write a little bit of a list. Like I have this list. Like he praised like Genghis Khan for conquering and having a lot of wives, even though he's like a historical fucking rapist. He looks at women as like an asset. When he was pressed on Pierce Morgan and asked like, "Hey, what do you think about them taking away women's rights to go to fucking school, university in Afghanistan?" He's like, "If they're so strong, they should be able to fight for themselves," which goes against like a more traditional like male perspective of like you're supposed to protect people who can't protect themselves. It just doesn't even fall in line with his own moral code. He's just dumb as fuck and very toxic.
yeah, he tried. Guys like him will try to do that gotcha of like, oh, I thought feminism said that women are empowered. It's like feminism, just because women are empowered doesn't mean that we don't still realize the realities that like women are physically weaker than men. So
Yeah.
it is easier to like take advantage of them physically if you have no fucking respect for them.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it just boils down to people in that sphere looking at masculinity as more important than femininity. When it's like, yeah, men are usually stronger, they can protect, et cetera, et cetera. But women literally push babies out of their vaginas. So I feel like, we should respect those two roles equally, not because it's always men above that role. It's always the way that they look at it. When you have the guy like, well, they're the leader of the household, they make all the decisions, they do all of this, they do all of that. And it's like, okay, but they like, they maybe men protect life, but women give life. So like, where's the balance? You can't consider one's better than the other, but they still do.
Yeah, it's different, but and then I think they have the idea that like we're attacking these traditional gender roles when we just say like it's okay if you don't want to live inside these traditional gender roles. It's like we're not saying that you're bad if you do have a traditional role where the man is the provider and the woman's the caregiver, but like if someone chooses to live outside of that and live like a non-traditional life, that doesn't like make them a bad person.
Yeah. And what I find kind of funny is that a lot of these people will basically say that this is how it should be. You should be in a relationship like just like this. In my experience, I feel like for the most part, and this isn't always happening, but like men tend to kind of fall into the person that makes more money, and women tend to fall into the place where they'll take care of the home a little bit more. Women, in my experience, usually want me to make decisions more, not by force, and they want to be able to make their own decisions too. But like they like to leave me up to like doing the stuff like the bills and this and that. I don't have to force anybody to do anything. Like you don't need to. If you were looking for that, be my guest. But like to actively say modern women are destroying the world, it's fucking incredible. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think as much as this sounds like a centrist take or whatever, I think that
Ooh, base
there are
time.
some base time. There are definitely some rad femmes who give more level-headed feminists a very bad rap, because there are some radical feminists who do say like anything that's directly fighting against the patriarchy is good and anything that falls under the patriarchy is bad. So women, stop wearing makeup, stop shaving, don't have don't let a man make more money than you. It's like, no, that's not, like, the goal of feminism should just be that we're like all on an equal playing field, and
Yeah.
that like everyone can kind of live their life in the way that suits them. Like if they want to live a traditional life, live a traditional life. If they want to live a non-traditional life, live a non-traditional life. Like
Yeah.
that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I see some of those like very radical feminist areas like pressuring women to have as much promiscuous sex as possible rather than like saying like, hey, it's kind of gross if anybody does it. That's my take. Whether it's a guy or a girl, you fuck around too much, you're gross. You know what I mean? I don't think that if you want to go fuck around, be my guest. Women shouldn't be shamed any more than men for it, but we should shame men for being fuckboys. That's where I'm at.
Well, actually, it's kind of interesting. There is a subset of rad femmes who actually have covered the idea that it's not necessarily sexually empowering to sleep around because you're kind of just giving men what they want. There actually is a subset of that, but that's kind of coming from a place of hating men because they're like, stop sleeping around because you're letting the evil men take advantage of
Yeah,
you.
you should just do what you
Um,
want and don't feel pressured to sleep around if you don't want to. And if you want to fuck around, just do whatever. You know, that's where it really should come from.
Yeah, my take on the whole like sleeping around thing is that we lived in a purity culture, very pressured by religion that like women should only, be virgins until they're married and sex should only happen between a husband and wife. And then I think we have a backlash to that where it's now like, no, we're going to rebel against purity culture and we're going to sleep around as much as possible. But then you realize, oh shit, this actually kind of benefits like scumbags who just want to like have a ton of sex. And that it's like sex isn't really something that's inherently empowering. Like if you feel empowered because you're like fighting back against purity culture, that's fine. But like this is something where, sex is a very serious thing that can have very lasting ramifications on your life like pregnancy or STDs, so you have to still be careful with it, and you have to still realize there's a bunch of people out there trying to use sex to be super manipulative.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that if you're doing something in your life, like if you're only engaging in having lots of casual sex to empower for a movement, I just feel like that's probably not the best way to do it. Like if you want to fuck around, do it. But like if your big motivation is like I'm gonna go sleep around because you know what empowers women, it's like it doesn't. It just pressures you to have sex. It's weird. I don't know. Just do what you want to do and just chill out a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think sex is inherently empowering or non-empowering. I think
It's just fun.
something that it's just something humans do with each other, and it's a very intimate thing that can bring people a lot of joy and a lot of pleasure. But then the flip side of that is it can be very dangerous and lead to a lot of really, traumatizing things or a lot of very life-changing things. So you have to take it super seriously.
Yeah, and sometimes even like sometimes it's not even as big as like potential pregnancy or sexual assault. Sometimes it's just when you look at the data, when it's whether it's men or women, the more sexual partners they have, the lower happiness rate they report. So I feel like it could potentially kind of hurt you in the long run when it comes to building relationships. I don't know if you could say it's factual, but I think that it can make it a bit difficult if you're constantly engaging in sex, especially through your developmental years, like in your teens to your mid 20s. If you're just going around fucking constantly, that's your whole focus. You're kind of setting yourself up for a life of just going around and fucking around as a focus and making your life very sex prioritized, and especially probably for men more than women, because I think men have to chase it a little more. When you focus so much on getting sex, you don't focus as much on building your career path or building you as a person and becoming a little bit more valuable to yourself and having a better long-term life goals.
Yeah, I don't agree with the idea of like looking down on people for their body count, but I think that we as a society should just be a little bit, I don't know, I feel like we should be a bit less sex focused and more like human connection focused, I guess. Like
Oh yeah,
what
for sure. That's a good idea
like
too.
if yeah, if your only thing is like, oh man, this weekend I really want to get laid, rather than like this weekend I could meet like a really cool person, and like yeah, sex might happen, but the thing that would be better is like if I could meet someone who's someone who I enjoy spending time with, and then because sex is always going to be more enjoyable, I feel like if it's with someone who you genuinely like spending time with. It
Oh,
doesn't have to be
100%.
like a long-term partner, but I don't know.
Well, no, 100%. Like I'll tell you, like with my wife, sex is much better with her than it ever was with anybody else. Part of that is 'cause, like we're obviously very connected to each other, but part of that too is like when you fuck somebody like the first time, one time, you don't know what they like, you don't know what's comfortable for some. If you care about those things, which you should, is what makes them comfortable. What they actually like. You're just kind of like bumping around. You don't really know what the fuck's going on. You're kind of just feeling it out. And if you don't develop a connection, you're not really going to go anywhere. For me, I used to date like for a few months at a time, and then if I wasn't feeling it, I would stop, and I would obviously have sex with the person too, which I don't think is the worst way to engage, but you know
Mhm.
I wasn't into like one night stands or anything. I don't feel like it's enough.
Yeah, I think it's mostly about just kind of the frame of mind that you're in, and I think it's about, yeah, there's nothing wrong with dating multiple people because you shouldn't. I definitely don't agree with the conservative idea that like just find someone to settle down with as quickly as possible. It's like no, you should make sure that you find the right person who's going to be really compatible with you in the long term. Um But
Yeah, take your time with it and feel that out. It's always a good idea. That's what young men need to learn is like building connections. Is I think is a very important thing. Instead of all the sex focused fucking nonsense, because you're not going to be happy when you're 30, and it's really weird when you're 30 something years old, still trying to talk to 20-year-old girls in the club. It's just fucking bizarre. It's not illegal. I don't think it's immoral, but you're certainly incredibly immature.
yeah, it's just a bit cringe, I would say.
Very, very cringe. Very cringe. You know.
Yeah,
So
I think we should I think a big thing is putting way less social pressure on men to like feel like they're pathetic if they're a virgin at like a certain age. I feel like there is a ton of pressure that if you're getting to the age of like, you know, your mid 20s and you haven't slept with someone, that you're like a pathetic loser. And it's like we should just create a society, I feel like, where, you know, just focus on your, if you're not finding success with women, like just focus on your career at that point, and then hopefully you'll become a more desirable person as you improve yourself, you know, over time.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, look inwardly to try to build yourself. Or if you are, I don't think we should shame anybody for being a virgin, but if you are struggling to get a partner, then, rather than shaming the fuck out of women, focus on, like you were saying, basically just build yourself up as a good person to be dateable. That's it. You know what I mean? So work on your career a little bit more, work on yourself. Maybe don't. I mean, hey, listen, from my perspective, I think a lot of people play video games too much sometimes. If it gets in the way of your growth as a person, that's bad. If it's like a nice hobby, that's good. But work on yourself a little bit while also trying to talk to women. And also don't be afraid to fail. Because I feel like a lot of young men nowadays, they're just afraid to fail. Because you're going to fail a lot. Like, obviously, you're going to ask a girl, she's going to say no, like 19 out of 20 times. You know what I mean? So that's just going to happen. But now people are so sensitive about it. They're like, oh my God, she said no. Stop it. Like, just when she says no, just don't care. Be like, okay, move on. You don't need to force her to try to say yes, and you don't need to cry about it like a little baby. Like that's part of being a man is learning that you're going to fail a lot when it comes to dating stuff because you're the ones with the pressure to talk to women. And maybe we should consider teaching women to ask men out more too. That'd be a nice idea as well. Show interest,
Yeah, I think that'd be
ladies.
good.
Show interest.
Yeah, I think oh, what was I going to say? I think that, and you don't even have to necessarily view it as a failure, because if you, as long as you're like developing your social skills, then that's something that if you get better at social skills, then hopefully that's going to benefit you and give you a greater likelihood of making a connection the next time that you talk to someone. I think yeah, it's very interesting because you'll see these manosphere people be like, oh well, it's like 60% of people under the age of 30 right now, like aren't, or of men right now under the age of 30 aren't having sex, and they're like they blame women for that. But
Um,
I feel like the blame for that is mostly on like this very digital age that we're in, where like there's way less human connection. Like I don't feel like that's men or women. I feel like it's part of that, like now everything is done on dating apps and everyone is afraid to like go up and just start conversations with people. And I feel like that's what, and I do think there is an increasing divide between like women who are feeling like afraid of men and men who are like having animosity towards women because they're learning things from Andrew Tate. So then that
yeah,
creates the
true.
divide where like men and women aren't connecting as much, you know?
Well, it creates a victim complex, and I hate that. That's what I hate is that they pretend to cut the bullshit in the world while promoting a victim complex for men to blame it on women. I think it's a third. I don't know. It's a lot. Apparently, a lot of men under 30 haven't had sex in the past year or more. That has.
Yeah.
I mean, listen. Maybe women are becoming more selective now because they have more money. But that's not a bad thing. Maybe young men, we are growing up in a generation without fathers or with at least only with one parent, which makes it difficult for them to actually grow as a person, and they're afraid to fail. I think that's a lot of it. People are afraid to fail. You got women who have more power, so they don't have to settle for some fucking scumbag asshole. Maybe young men are focusing too much on jerking off and playing video games instead of building their careers. Maybe there's like a big antisocial aspect to it. There's probably a lot of factors, but like realistically speaking, all you can really control as a young man is just yourself. So just try to be a little more dateable. We should focus on teaching men and women to be more dateable rather than to shit on women because they don't want to fuck a guy who, God bless him, doesn't shower and doesn't cut his hair, doesn't clean his fingernails, and just is overall unpleasant to be around because they didn't want to learn to actually have to care about women. Like, it's a dance. So
Yeah, and the advice that someone like Andrew Tate gives is just not sustainable for your average man, because for him he's like, "Oh yeah, it's fine to shit on women as long as you make $100 million and own Bugattis." It's like, well, it's like, yeah, but that's not going to be your average man. The average man, if you're like shitting on women constantly, it's going to turn women off and you're going to be even less likely to get a date with them, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is that he says it sometimes he'll be like, well, it's just for really rich guys. You're talking to like the average everyday person. You know that like if you were just saying like I like to date younger girls and to have no money and I like full control, but I'd be like, okay, fine, that's you. But to advocate that that is the way the dynamic should be, like you were saying before, where he's like praising fucking like regressive countries where women don't even have equal rights to men. Just stupid.
Well, it's because Andrew Tate's whole persona is a business model. It's because teaching men to like just, work on themselves and do like reasonable steps isn't something that's going to make Andrew Tate a ton of money.
No,
If he
it's not.
sells them this worldview that like if you follow me, then you're gonna get a Bugatti, then that's way more likely to get men to click on his, Hustlers University course. So that's the thing. It's like reasonable advice is way less profitable than this like very unreasonable advice, because people want to have this like fantasy view of the world. Of course, everyone has the capability that they could become rich and famous, but like, the majority of people
It's
probably
very
aren't
slim.
going to.
It's very. You're better off teaching people, and again, well, if we're going to focus on young men, to go into career fields that need people, like some kind of technical job, like a trade school job, because it's hard to automate those away. You're better off, like, because if you become a welder and you make a good $80,000 to $100,000 a year, that's amazing. Go for that. Don't try to go for the crypto scam, like where you put all your money into something and then you fail. You're not going to be very good. And oftentimes,
Well, yeah, because we're seeing now like 99% of these dudes who 2 years ago were hyping up their crypto, like
they're losing
most
it.
of them have lost a shit ton of money now.
Yep, they're bombing out, man. They are bombing the fuck out.
And it's like everyone in the financial industry was like, this crypto thing is a bubble. Maybe there's long term, maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum have longevity, but these shit coins people are making this is definitely a bubble. And then people just didn't listen to it because people want the get rich quick scheme over the sustainable. I mean, I feel like that's just such a human. It's just such a
It's very human to
human
be
way
lazy.
to. Yeah.
Honestly.
That people would rather do the crash diet of lose 20 pounds in 5 weeks than like have to restructure their entire like nutrition and the way they view food.
Oh, absolutely. Personally, though, keep an eye out for Crypto Zoo because that's the next big thing in 2023, guys. Okay.
It's so funny that like the price of CryptoZoo actually rose once people were talking about it, because they're like, oh well, it's everyone's talking about how bad it is, but maybe maybe I should still buy some
Well,
because
that's because that's just them. If that's when you want to buy in. They're talking about how it's bad, so they're not buying in, and you are got the golden ticket. Boom, you buy into that shit.
yeah, buy
Yeah.
buy in low, because we definitely can trust that Logan's gonna turn this around for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Crypto eggs, I would never. But listen, I mean, I don't know the specifics about it. It seems like it might have been a scam. Maybe it was a project that fell through because Logan trusted four people or whatever around him that are pieces of shit. But realistically, why the fuck are you investing into Logan Paul? Like we've gone through this how many times now? I mean, he's not a particularly good or honest person. I mean, you're kind of hurting yourself at that point.
Yeah, I feel like conversations around these, it can get kind of wrapped up in the definition of like whether you want to label something a scam or not, because I feel like to label it a scam, that kind of implies some purposefully Logan being purposefully malicious, where I think it's kind of more like he's just being really stupid.
That's what I think.
And
I think he's just a moron and he just fucked up again. You know.
I think he's very stupid, and I think he partnered with scammers is what I would say. It seems like from the evidence of the situation.
I think that's what it is too. I mean, that's very charitable, but I agree with you. That's what it seems. It seems like Logan went into this project like with decent intentions. He hired some less than stellar individuals. Then it kind of fell through because this person didn't feel like they got paid for this and this having this, and then they kind of run out. That's what it seems like. But either way, it's Logan Paul.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Stop being stupid. Like, if you lost 50 grand, that I don't know what to tell you, brother. Like, it's shame. Fool me once, shame on you. But to fool me 15 times, you know what I mean? Yeah, at this point, take a little accountability for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. But I also think that It can be easy to place blame on like the average person who is making a really stupid investment, and it's like, yeah, you were being a dumbass, but also some of these people, if you're working a dead end job and you love Logan Paul and this is your, you have an extra $1,000 and you're like, maybe this is my ticket out of fucking poverty. Like, obviously some people are going to take that chance, and that's why you have to be careful with these things. That statistically, when you have millions and millions of followers, there's going to be people out there who are desperate enough to invest in whatever dumb shit you sell to them. So that's why you have an obligation to like make sure that you're promoting good things to your audience.
Oh, for sure. But at that point, we're talking about like, from me, my perspective, we're talking about like an idiot tax. Because this is like the third time. I don't even know. Like, what have we had? Dink Doink. He's what a red flag.
Yeah.
But he's the everybody likes
Yeah.
a reformed guy. I guess so. I don't know. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do, Mr. Paul?
Yeah. There's always going to be suckers though when you have a big enough of an audience, and I think that's why you've got to make sure that the stuff you're working with is above board. I almost I was debating whether or not to do a sponsorship with that established titles company right before all the shit hit the fan with them.
Yeah, that was. Hey, listen, it didn't seem super transparent, but I feel like people overreact to the established titles thing. At the end of the day, it always seemed like a gag gift. You didn't technically buy the plot of land, but you were basically buying it from that. They bought it already, and you're like buying a plot on there to put something down. And you can't technically be a lord or what. I don't know. I feel like this was like a stocking stuffer to me, and people are having like a meltdown over it. It's like naming a star. Who gives a fuck? Tell it.
Yeah, I took it as the same as buying a star, but I do think that if they're not being transparent about that, you legally can't actually consider yourself a lord, and that's in your marketing, then that's definitely something you need to be careful about. Yeah, they reached out to me, and I told my manager, I'm like, I don't know if I want to work with them. Ask them if I can still have the sponsorship, if I can like explicitly say in the sponsorship that what I'm selling is worthless.
Just say like, you're not actually a lord, but you can call yourself one. There you go.
Yeah. The only way I would work with them is if I could like explicitly say that this really has no value, what you're buying right now. And, of course, they don't really want to give me a bunch of money to to say that it's worthless.
I wonder how.
I'm glad I dodged that bullet, but I could at least see when they reached out to me, I'm like, this really doesn't seem like it has any actual value to it.
Oh yeah, no, it seemed like a whole silly thing. Luckily for me, nobody reached out for advertisements, so I don't have to worry about potentially supporting something stupid. That's the benefit of being
you're very privileged.
Hey,
in that way.
Listen, there is a privilege. There is truly a privilege to being a smaller content creator. Like, true, there are some privileges. You'll get less heat on you. Obviously, lower expectations, shit like that. So, listen, it's true. It's true that when you fuck up, when you fuck up and you're a large content creator, there's much more heat on you than for a smaller person.
There are definitely benefits, but yeah, whenever a big creator's like, oh, it's so hard having this many followers because there's so much pressure, it's like you kind of, I don't know, you have to know that that's part of the business when you get into it.
Oh yeah, tell them to stop being a silly goose at that point, because you're acting silly,
Yeah, for me, I just have to, whenever I'm starting to feel like the pressure, I try to take just take a bit of time off and recenter myself, and just remind myself that of course there's going to be, when I'm reaching hundreds of thousands of people, of course there's going to be some crazy person saying some really dumb shit, and I shouldn't get. I have a really bad tendency to want to respond to every person who criticizes me.
I feel you on that one. I personally am just learning to not care anymore. My big thing, and I'm sure maybe you won't particularly care for this, but have you been watching Lex Friedman at all lately?
I checked out a bit of his Destiny interview, and I checked out a bit of his Kanye and Ben Shapiro, but I haven't watched much more than that.
Yeah, I think I've watched all three of those. That's pretty much all I've watched. But I like the guy, and I watched him talk to Ben, and I'm not a huge fan of Ben, but there were some pretty interesting things that were being said in there. And one thing that resonated with me was Ben talking about how he deals with the heat of people disagreeing with his very good takes, right? And what he had said was interesting to me, because he had mentioned that it's difficult to sift through all the criticism, but if you get a nice, solid sports system in your like your real life, you'll be able to kind of navigate that better. Somebody who could put it into perspective, because online some people are either going to just disagree with you and have and think that that means that you're wrong and have a massive like disproportionate response, or they might criticize you for things that aren't necessarily worth criticizing, and it's hard to navigate that. That's why I feel like you see some people that are like super sensitive to criticism and they'll just apologize for everything. So I just take it in stride, and like I talk to my wife about it. She's not terminally online. She keeps me grounded, and instead of just like instantly reacting, and if I do feel like I'm wrong, I don't even always necessarily admit it. I'll just move forward knowing that I made a mistake, because sometimes people also come up with these performative public apologies like, guys, I'm so sorry. That not every mistake you make in the real world is something worth acknowledging to like this drastic degree. If you just like if you think people float around life without thinking about anything, but if you think about what's going on in your life, you make mistakes all the time at like work, like little mistakes that you don't need to be chastised for, or you don't have to have like this crazy fucking meltdown over. Like maybe you leave a piece of food out if you're working at like a fucking restaurant or something, or you forget to like you forget to clean this if you're cleaning a cleaning business, and you just go like, oh, let me do better next time. But people have a very online perspective of everything, because people will have a meltdown because they think you did something so horribly wrong, but it was like the smallest deal that doesn't matter in general.
Yeah, like if you misspeak, or if you haven't, there's like some piece of evidence that you completely weren't aware of,
Yeah.
and then you put out something and you just weren't. It's like, yeah, people are gonna make mistakes. You can't have this expectation that like every single person is gonna be perfect at all times. And I definitely agree with that. Cancel culture is a bit of a beast that you've got to be obviously you should take accountability for your actions, but if you start taking accountability for things you shouldn't be apologizing for, that's just going to be a really nasty thing for you, because that's going to open you up to the people online who are like, all right, now it's open season to scrutinize every little thing that you
Yeah.
do,
Yeah, you if you give in too much, it gives people like license to go crazy and criticize. So it's fucking nuts. I will say though, the landscape seems to be getting decent. Like I've been noticing that like Hassan and Ethan specifically, and I've been trying to do it myself, but I don't know. It's a lot of people seem to be trying to just chill the fuck out and not like scream at everybody they disagree with so far. Leading into the end of last year into this year, and just chilling the fuck out and relaxing, because things have been so stressful. You know, and like letting things go. Like people make mistakes, like letting things go instead of every time like, oh, every time I talk about Hassan, let's talk about when he said 9/11. It's like, okay, let's fucking move on. Shit like that. Like
Yeah, I think it's easy to forget that we're kind of like, it's fucking insane that the internet has really not been around for that long at all. And it's like, we it, it feels weird to make such a massive, like, I feel like moving forward, hopefully society will realize like, yeah, when you're a kid, you're gonna have said some dumb shit,
oh
and
yeah, for
like
sure.
that we can't be having this massive reaction, because like everything is online, and like people are growing and learning. And yeah, I really do think like as a leftist, that's like the biggest pitfall of my side, is the people who act like, if you said something bad when you were 14, that then your
You gotta
entire
die.
career needs to be flushed down the toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, the problem too is that like I feel like it's because so many people, regardless of where they are, um, they're so unaware. They're not self-aware. They don't think about what they're doing every day. They kind of float through life. And if they were more aware of like the mistakes they were making, they'd be like, oh, they would realize they make just as many mistakes as everybody else. But instead, like people pretty much shut off their brains to do like their work, and then they come on the internet and they're like, fuck, look, this guy did a bad thing. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true, because you know that a lot of the people who are trying to cancel someone for something, if you could go through their entire life, they've done things that are just as bad. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky tightrope to walk, because I definitely believe in holding people accountable for their actions, especially for just the sake of, like if Andrew Callahan, for example, does have this pattern of being really coercive, I think that it's worth letting the public know, if nothing else, for the sake of when he's traveling around, women should be a bit wary that, to be careful around him.
Yeah,
I
I
feel like there's definitely utility in that.
oh yeah, well, excluding that, that's a pretty extreme situation. I mean, if he did that, I don't know what he could return from. But generally, when it comes to accountability, I feel like a lot of times people say like we need accountability culture, which I think is true, but then they won't like define what that accountability is. You know, if you got a kid that I don't know says like a bad boy word 10 years ago, what accountability do they need to like hold to? Or I think that's what it is people aren't really having like a punishment that matches the crime. A lot of people will be very hateful sometimes, like a gladiator arena online, and go fucking crazy.
Yeah, or ignore the complexities of human beings, that like everyone has probably said something bad at one point in their life, and that when you when you label them, this is what you are, this person is this, like I feel like it's not fair to really give someone a concrete label unless you can see a pattern of their behavior. I mean, obviously with certain crimes, like if you commit murder once, like you're a murderer
Yeah,
forever. But I feel like
that's true.
but I feel like, with more like social things, I really don't, because people's perspectives and opinions are constantly changing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just about that proportionality, and that's one of the things that bothers me. People will say, "I want accountability for this," and then you ask, like, "What does that mean?" And they won't have like a real answer because they never thought about it. They never thought about like what is the punishment you feel this person should have? Oh, I don't know. You just want them to be punished, and then everybody's just yelling and screaming in intensity. The anger boils up. We get more and more intense, and we don't really have like a actual pathway to vindication.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I've talked about this a few times. Like a lot of leftists are they believe in rehabilitative justice instead of punitive justice. Basically, the
Yeah.
idea that like you shouldn't just lock someone away for life if they make a mistake. You should try to rehabilitate them. But then the way they act on Twitter is literally the complete opposite of
Yes,
that.
I
It's like,
100,000% agree with that. It's something that I've been talking about too. Like they will literally think that there should be a pathway to when it comes to like murderers to be reformed, but then when it's like it's the silly white kid that like doesn't understand systemic racism, that kid needs to die. It's how it feels. It's fucking insane. Rehabilitation culture for everybody, not just some people. It's fucking nuts.
yeah, I feel like we have to have, and I got into an argument this last week with prison abolitionists. I was like, I really don't think we can fully abolish prison, because sometimes you are going to have to lock away the murderers and the rapists. And I
Bro.
feel like it's kind of like that. It's like that with social media. It's like some people, I don't think EDP should ever, we should ever be like, nah, you're a good guy now. You just had a little bit of pedophilia. It's like, no, like, I'm never gonna
EDP
think.
is a law. EDP is like a lost cause because the system's not going to stop him. There's so many. That's like that could be a whole fucking analysis in and of itself about EDP. What's going on with that weird fuck? Um, but
Yeah.
certainly that's a whole fucking thing. Are you arguing on Twitter?
Oh yeah. Sometimes
Oh no,
I'm trying to.
no, don't
I'm
do it.
trying to. I'm trying to get better about it.
I would
It's
delete
a.
it. That's how I feel. I feel incredible after I deleted it. That's just me,
You delete
person.
Twitter.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
freeing.
It's it's just a double-edged sword, because it's like I'm getting kind of social interaction, and I'm getting a way to kind of put my ideas out there, and it can feel nice tweeting things when you have like your reasonable followers, like, and we're just kind of having a discussion. But then whenever you get retweeted by the wrong person, and suddenly now you're on this side of Twitter, then it's like all fucking hell breaks loose. So
It goes too fucking crazy for me. My relationship with Twitter was that everybody makes mistakes, and there's mistakes I was making, but it felt so incredibly disproportionate and unproductive, and I felt like my content was just getting worse because I was so worried about like what's this person going to say. And once I took a step back, like I feel like I've been making better decisions, and I'm more proud of the content I'm making because I'm not constantly like online looking to see what people are saying. Talk your shit, vent, whatever you got to do, but at the end of the day, this is what it is. What are you going to do? You know.
yeah, I mean, I probably agree with you that deleting Twitter would be better for me, but I just yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to structure my life, because I moved to Australia last year, so I feel a bit socially isolated. So then I'm trying to figure out like what's the best way to kind of keep a bit of social interaction? And probably Twitter is, yeah, probably one of the worst ways to
Wow.
do that, honestly.
It is so definitely the worst way. What happened to that podcast, Ryan?
I know.
I forgot what it's
I
called.
just
The Holy Jesus
the
podcast.
the Fellowship Covenant. Yeah, I was having fun with it. I really love Nick. Nick's a great guy. I think I just realized after doing about 6 or 7 episodes, I'm like, I can't really see myself doing this for 100 episodes, and I'd rather kind of just get out of doing it now rather than get 100 episodes down the line and realize that I'm not like super passionate about this. So
Oh, is that
that's
what it was?
kind of
You
where I was
weren't
coming
you
from.
weren't like super passionate about it. That's why you didn't want to do it.
I wasn't super passionate about it. I was dealing with feeling stressed from it because we kept running into issues with finding the right editors. Like we were trying to find an editor, and then they do a really terrible job, and then we'd be right down to the wire, still trying to find an editor. And then like it also wasn't really profitable, and then it was like taking a lot of my time that I could have been using towards other things. So it was kind of like 6 different factors all at the same time.
All right. Yeah.
None of it had to do with Nick. I'm still great friends with him, and I think he's a great guy. It just didn't really feel like, sometimes you're going to experiment on social media and find that something didn't really work out.
I feel that. I understand where you're coming from. That's like the wave of the future. I've been like that seems like a lot of work to do a podcast, which you think is weird because I come on and just talk all the time, but there's so much like behind the fucking scenes stuff to do that you have to consider and all that shit. But that is the way. That's the wave of the future. You could be like Joe Rogan.
Joe Beard. You think so? I think podcasts are interesting because it is definitely a lot of work to because rather than just uploading the video, you have to like make sure it's on all the different platforms, and you have to make sure that all the, like, we were doing a video podcast, so we were having to make sure that all the video was like properly edited and everything. And then it's like an hour long, so that's actually becomes a lot more work than you realize.
No, it sounds like a lot. I'm surprised you guys put that much editing into it at all. Should have just fucking did an hour and left it. You know what I mean? Just let it be. That's how I would do it. Something really simple. And then if it really got bigger and you wanted to do more, to me, it's like the 80-20. The 80% is like the talking. And then afterwards, maybe you wanted to, when it started becoming really financially viable, you could look for somebody to hire, make slow transitions.
Yeah, you're right. We probably win it. I think me and him are a bit of perfectionists. So we're like, if we're going to release something, we want it to be like professional quality right out of the gate. But then that has the downside of that we're having to pay an editor a lot of money when we're not making that much money on it. So
it becomes like a whole big it is what it is. You live and you learn. But personally, you don't have to always be perfect. A lot of people will get into your shit like before you make it all perfect and shit, and then afterwards you can really build it up. But a lot of people just start with like the bare minimum. It's not a bad idea. Something light, chilling, something that you enjoy. That's not work until it becomes work. But by then you're so used to it that you don't hate it,
Yeah, for sure. I think this just from the get-go, this felt like work, and I was like, oh.
Yeah, I feel that. That's
if there were different factors, like the money was there, or like I was feeling super creatively fulfilled. Like if a few factors were different, I probably would have stuck with it. But
it is what it is. It's all right. It's just Nick. Fuck that guy. I'm just kidding. I have nothing against Nick. I have nothing against the guy. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'll tell him you said that.
Yeah. Jen, do you think he even knows who I am? That's like the weirdest part.
I think I mentioned you to him one time.
And which version of Papa God does he know who I am?
I think this was maybe like 6 months ago or something.
So probably the TikTok version of Papa God. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I don't know.
This is what it is. It's funny because I talked to my wife about it because I've been like slowly coming to TikTok, but I've been just kind of doing like quick breakdowns on some of the videos I've been posting on my YouTube. Like I'm trying to, do that. And I was like, oh man, like I miss the old days when I used to be like, I was viral. And she's like, yeah, but your content was terrible. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, I hate it. She's like, I like some of your videos, but some of your like jokes are just stupid and like mean. And I was like, oh wow, that hurt. Like I didn't know that they were that bad. Like she's like, yeah, they're just mean, which doesn't sound that bad. But like now, for some reason, when she said it was mean, I'm like, wow, that hurts my feelings. Like, I don't want to be mean. Like that's not nice. So it's like, all right, you know what I mean? And I haven't changed too much. Like I still talk about the same stuff for the most part. I'm just like nicer about it. And I've realized that sometimes when you make silly jokes about women, people who are actually sexist think those jokes are funny. And I
They'll latch
personally,
onto that.
I'm just trying to I'm just being silly. But when I do it on YouTube, if I make a silly joke about women, it's in like a half-hour video, so nobody thinks I'm actually sexist, you know. But on TikTok, when 15 seconds, people think I'm a real, you know.
Yeah, I think what it is on TikTok there is always going to be an endless supply of really dumb teenagers to dunk on.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of realizing that, you know, in the same way that we should allow, people being problematic when they're teenagers to learn and grow from their mistakes. I feel like we should allow, teenage girls who are have gone a bit too crazy with the feminism.
Give
I feel like
let
we
them
should
have
allow
their
them to,
moment. Yeah. Let
yeah,
them have their
let them
little
have their
moment.
moment,
Yeah, I get
and
that.
realize that you'll probably, once you think about this more, because I've actually been seeing a lot of different feminists talking about how, like, in 2016 they were kind of in like the men are trash era, but as feminism has been progressing, there's been a lot more conversations about, like, we really need to empathize with men, and we need to have conversations about men's mental health, and we need to, like, if we actually want to progress as a society, it can't be men versus women, it has to be like everyone
Yeah.
progressing together,
Or else Andrew Tate takes hold. Another thing learning about social media
Yeah.
is that children operate the moral code. Like it's weird when you make it like 2 million views on when you dunk on somebody, but it's like, yeah, it's a bunch of 15-year-olds. Like, you know, and I, you know,
Yeah.
I don't mind my 15-year-olds in my audience, but sometimes they may not know what's going on. So it's not the best thing to worry.
Sometimes they may have not matured to the point where they've taken into account other perspectives or have a
Sometimes,
more, usually.
all the time, you know, except for my fans. They're
Yeah.
incredible. They are very thoughtful,
Every one of your
introspective
fans is
15-year-olds.
perfect, but every other
Yeah,
fan is
exactly.
terrible. Yeah.
That's what it is. No, but it's so bad. And then you get looped into it. You think that like because they're anonymous. Like if you took all the people who viewed all your videos and put them in a room and you go fuck. You know what I mean? If you did that to
Look
me,
at all these children. Yeah.
if it was like 2 or 3 years ago, whenever I was still alive, and I made like an edgy video, like I always thought it, like I honestly always thought it was like a reasonable, level-headed people that were like, yeah, this is funny, but I don't believe this. If you put them in a room, they'd be like, yes, they would probably, it would be terrible. I would be like, wow, that was fucked. Like there are a lot of you guys really hate women. Yeah, we do. Fucking terrible. I was like, damn,
We genuinely do hate them. Yeah.
fuck, that's not what I was going
Yeah.
for. I wasn't going for that.
Yeah. Or like the random comment calling me fat, it'd probably hurt my feelings less if I could look
Yes.
at and see, oh, it's a 12-year-old,
Yeah,
like,
it
I'm
was
not gonna
probably
get.
fat. He's probably some fat fucking 12-year-old too, or their teeth are
Yeah.
just terrible. Like they're just ugly and dumb.
Yeah.
So you see the ugly dumb kid criticize you, and then you'd be like, "Yeah, see you
Yeah,
ugly piece
exactly.
of shit." Right? They're probably poor, can't afford braces, but that's not my problem, asshole. You know, don't call me fat. You know.
Yeah, that's definitely what I would say to the child.
Yep. So that's what
Yeah.
I would say to a child if I had to. Not afraid.
I've been pretty happy that I think I've cultivated an audience that's pretty, like, considerate and pretty at least a lot more level-headed than the one that I had on TikTok. I think TikTok in general is just, it's a bunch of young kids, so they aren't level-headed, but
It's
like
crazy.
whenever I've talked about how, like, oh, I had to take a bit of time off or I quit the podcast or whatever, my audience has been, like, in general really supportive. Whereas on TikTok, whenever you'd say something, you'd get, there'd always be at least 100 people saying dumb shit.
Yeah, people are mean on TikTok and dumb. Audiences are terrible. I
I
hate.
mean,
I
I really
hate them.
I don't think it's really
I
I
hate
really
them.
don't think it's much more complicated than it really is. Just a bunch of teenagers that haven't their, like, frontal cortexes haven't fully developed, so they don't fully understand empathy.
And they're also like only engaging with you for 15-second bursts. Whereas somebody sits down and watches like a half hour of your content and they're like, wow, I know this person a little more because I've seen how they make content. I get a little bit of an insight. So like, oh, they're more of a person to
Mhm.
me. When I criticize them, I might be a little bit more thoughtful versus TikTok where it's just like, oh, where the fuck have you been, fat ass? You know, it's like, oh, you know, on YouTube.
I think generally the better someone gets to know you, hopefully that means that they can engage with you in better faith, as long as you've proven that you're, like, a level-headed person.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, that's life, I guess. I'm gonna bang. I gotta pee. What did you want? Something else? I want to say something else.
Oh no, you can go pee. It's
Well, I'm gonna
okay.
bang. Well, I'm gonna bang out and eat dinner with my wife. That's what I meant to say. I just said I have to pee for some reason when I get up and leave. I say I have to pee. But yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
If you have anything else you
Just
want
the
to talk
last.
about, yeah, go ahead. Throw it out.
No. It's all good. The last thing I wanted to say is, yeah, I'm possibly going to be getting back into posting more stuff on TikTok, but I'm just trying to like engage with it on a more
It's weird.
more level-headed way.
It's weird, and if you're level-headed, Ryan, you're not gonna get views. All right.
It is what it is. But yeah, I
That's
think
how
now
it
that
is
I
right
have
now
a
for me.
yeah, now that I have a more established YouTube audience and I'm actually like making money from that, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off to be getting views on TikTok. So
Yeah, that's true too. And like I've been trying to just not care about the views right now because you know I'm like some people aren't following me on TikTok, but I think that's a good thing with the smaller platform I have now, obviously. But it's like a good thing because those are people who don't want to watch anyway, so they won't see me in the algorithm. So you know, it's like that's slow. It'll take a while, but I think it'll have a nice little hit anyway. So
yeah, you just got to filter out the audience over time.
yeah, and I can't wait for YouTube Shorts to be profitable. That'll be good.
Hell yeah!
It's coming in
All right,
February.
It was good. Good talking to you, man. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Take care. Have a good one. All right. Stop by anytime. All right.
Sounds great. Talk to you later.
Peace. All righty. All righty. It's always fun talking to Mr. Beard, Ryan.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.